Hello and welcome to the fourth and final edition of Innovative Game Changers presented by EY. For the past 3 weeks, we have profiled entrepreneurs who thought big and then worked for their dreams. They inspire India with their work and they are all winners of the EY Entrepreneurs of the Year Awards 2013. This week, meet the recipients of the highest accolades of the EY 2013 Awards. The EY Entrepreneur of the Year 2013 is Uday Kotak. Uday Kotak has combined strong leadership with steady innovation at Kotak Mahindra. His foresight and reading of financial services in India ensured that Kotak Mahindra was the first NBFC to get a banking license. He has energized employees to transform Kotak Mahindra into a full financial services group, creating an experience, not just a product. Meet Uday Kotak, the EY Entrepreneur of the Year 2013.
Uday Kotak decided to take up a regular job after having completed his MBA, but it was his father who advised him to start a venture of his own.
A friend of mine from the MBA class who was joining a company called Nelco was debating with me about whether he should go into marketing or finance, and I said, why not finance? So he joined Nelco in the finance department, and in the first few weeks of his job came back to me and said, hey Uday, I have got a very stretched working capital cycle. Therefore, is it possible for you to ask some of your family and friends to invest in bills of exchange which are accepted by Nelco, which is a Tata company, and pay off the suppliers. And at the end of 90 days, it is the liability of Nelco to pay. The rate of interest, he said, is the same rate at which they borrow from banks, which is 17%. And I just found that rate pretty interesting. So I went to a few family friends and they went on to say that they put their money in bank deposits and the rate of interest which banks paid depositors was 6%. So here was a pretty simple idea that between the 6 and the 17% there was an opportunity. So I told my family friends that I could get them 12% for a Tata company risk, and I went to Nelco and said, instead of 17 I will give you money at 16%, but give me a lot more of the volume. So I was in business, borrowing at 12 and lending at 16 and making a 400 basis point spread, which I thought was very good.
After successfully having established the business, it was time to look at new opportunities to grow.
Till 1989, no bank in India financed cars. The first bank to start was Citibank, and they used to lend at 13% flat rate of interest, which translated to more than 30% per annum effective rate of interest. So we started lending on the same terms as Citibank, but since cars were in short supply, we would book cars and offer the cars to our customers on immediate delivery. So we built a car finance business around that in 1989, moved on to the brokerage and investment banking business in the early 90s, went public in 91, 92, and thereafter I think we began to figure out that as the Indian market was growing, we were a little bit like frogs in the well. The world was changing around us and we needed to know how that world in finance worked. So between 93 and 96, we worked out alliances with Goldman Sachs in the investment banking and securities business and Ford Credit in the car finance business, and became joint venture partners with both these companies in 1995 and 1996. We went into the mutual fund and the asset management business. In 2000, 2001, into the life insurance business.
The turning point came in 2003 when Kotak Mahindra Finance became a full-fledged commercial bank.
When we got the banking license and decided to go ahead to become a commercial bank, we were in a joint venture at that stage with Goldman Sachs. So a lot of my friends at Goldman Sachs actually said, hey Uday, why are you moving into a low ROE commercial banking business away from investment banking and securities? My answer at that stage was, that we will continue to be in investment banking and securities, but the future is customer centricity, and the banking platform gives us the ability to work in the broader interests of the customer beyond products.
Seeing Kotak Mahindra in different cities and areas is what brings immense joy to Uday Kotak.
I loved seeing our color, the red and the blue, out on the branch signs across as we started building. And even today, whenever I pass by a branch or an ATM, it gives me enormous pleasure to see it out there on the streets.
Uday Kotak's journey wasn't easy as he had to face a lot of obstacles and challenges, but his entrepreneurial skill helped him overcome them.
Our banking business was finding huge challenges, and what worked for us between 2003 and 2008 was that a lot of our non-banking businesses, including securities, investment banking, asset management and others, were doing extremely well.
Uday Kotak has always been a go-getter and has managed to carve a niche for his company.
If you look at our relative positioning, we are now the 4th largest private sector bank in terms of market cap. And from a position where we started this company in 1985 with 30 lakhs of capital, we now sit at a market cap in excess of 50,000 crores with our own net worth in excess of 18,000 crores. So we have deep pockets, we have a solid team of 25,000 people. So a company which started in 1985 with 3 people is now more than 25,000 people, and that's a matter of great satisfaction. But I look at this not as a destination, I look at this as a journey, and I feel 28 years later that the journey has just begun.
Obviously over the last 15-20 years he's become an enormously wealthy sort of person. He's a billionaire, dollar billionaire, all of that. But I think, you know, at heart he's still very, very middle class in his sort of the way he thinks about things. I mean, the way he sort of expresses his view on matters, etc. I think it's a very heartening sort of trait, so much so that I mean, for people who know him in the organization today, you have in most organizations at senior levels people who sort of you know, buy upmarket sort of vehicles and that sort of thing. Now in Kotak it becomes a little difficult because for a long period of time Uday himself doesn't upgrade to a particular sort of higher brand, etc. So for everybody else it's very difficult to sort of do that unless the boss himself. So that's in a sense who he is. I mean, he's not very comfortable sort of in a flamboyant sort of avatar, either displaying wealth or and I think in a sense that's probably the essence of Uday Kotak.
The guiding philosophy for Kotak Mahindra has been Uday Kotak's firm belief in himself and his vision.
I think the philosophy over the years you learn, and I'm very clear that in India it is possible to build a business on values and value. Values because it stands you the test of time. You have to stick to what you call as the basic fundamentals of doing it right, and genuinely every single day we try and ensure that we meet those simple criteria of do it right.
The passion to create a financial organization at par with global players is what drives Uday Kotak.
I think my view is that if you go back to the history of financial services, particularly the United States, and I remember my first trip in the early 90s when I went to the US and New York, you saw a JP Morgan, you saw a Goldman Sachs, you saw Merrill Lynch, you saw Morgan Stanley, and I stepped back and asked myself the question, hey, these are all family names which were sponsored and built by families and individuals once upon a time. Today they are now global institutions well beyond the individuals and the families. Therefore, what is the driving force for me and us at Kotak is to create an institution beyond individuals.
An interesting twist in Uday Kotak's tale is the point when Anand Mahindra decided to invest in the business.
When I was in the early stages of my career, I met Anand Mahindra in 1984 as a customer. Anand was just back from Harvard and had joined his family company, Mahindra Eugene Steel Company at Bakhtawar, which is where my office was for many years later. So Anand's card, I still remember, was General Manager Commercial, Mahindra Eugene Steel Company. So I called on him as a customer and offered to provide a service which was the bill discounting facility and the speed of turnaround time as the key USP for him to do business with us. Anand responded and Mahindra Eugene became a customer of ours, and then as we were looking at our future, we wanted to incorporate and become a formal and a proper financial services company. At that stage, Anand took a 15% stake out of our 30 lakhs capital. I'm extremely proud and delighted that Anand in 1984-85 agreed to have the Mahindra family name given to us, and which is why we decided to call it Kotak Mahindra.
Hard work, vision and acumen all rolled into one man, Uday Kotak. Now, the winner of the EY Lifetime Achievement Award. But first, a quick break. Welcome back. You're watching Innovative Game Changers presented by EY. The EY Lifetime Achievement Award 2013 was given to a passionate Indian with a global vision, Dr. Yusuf Hamied of Cipla. With 53 years invested at Cipla, Dr. Hamied's mantra has been, everyone must have access to essential medicines. He's delivered on his promise in India, Africa and beyond. Dr. Yusuf Hamied is also a committed philanthropist and recipient of the Padma Vibhushan.
When I joined the pharma industry, it was in its infancy. At that point in time, multinational companies were ruling India, etc. But we had learnt a lesson way back in 1939 from Mahatma Gandhi, when India was asked by the British to assist in the war effort, and the drugs had stopped coming to India from abroad, because at that time we were only importing drugs. So what happened at the time was Gandhi came to Cipla and asked us to produce medicines for the war effort, which we did. And it was the first lesson that we learned of self-reliance and self-sufficiency.
It was Yusuf Hamied's strong will to get the then existing laws pertaining to the drug industry in India changed that proved helpful for the indigenous drug industry in India as a whole.
When I came back in 1960, as a very national-minded Indian, I found that all the doors were blocked for us because the multinationals were ruling India. India was following a patent bill left by the British in 1911. And I fought very hard with a group of like-minded Indians and had the law changed in 1972. That law gave the Indian drug industry, indigenous Indian drug industry, the legal right to produce any medicine we wanted.
Times were tough and the need of the hour was to produce drugs that would serve as game changers.
In 1960, the position in Cipla was very, very difficult. In 1960, our total sales at that time was about 50 lakhs of rupees a year. The only establishment we had was this place here. We had 700 workers. And when I looked at the portfolio of products that we were doing, every major product was blocked. Because again, on the patent laws that the multis had a monopoly on all the drugs, chloramphenicol monopoly. The only window of opportunity I saw at that time was the sex hormones. And I personally took an interest in the manufacture of hormones in India, and we were the first company in India to manufacture hormones. Because even at that time, I felt that India's biggest problem would be family planning.
Taking up the challenge to produce drugs for chronic diseases, Cipla came up with AZT to combat the hazard of HIV.
By 1993, we made commercially AZT. We put it in the market in 93 in India at $2 a day against the international price of $12 a day. And lo and behold, we couldn't even sell one capsule, because $2 a day meant $60 a month. Indians couldn't afford that at the time. One bright day in 1996-97, I read a medical article called HAART, H-A-A-R-T, and that article said that a cocktail of 3 HIV drugs could control HIV. And suddenly, I don't know why or how, my interest revived. And I told our R&D boys, let us try and make the cocktail.
It was at a big European Commission meeting on AIDS where Yusuf Hamied tried to get takers for the cocktail drug for HIV, but luck didn't favor him this time either.
At that European Union meeting in September 2000, Cipla offered the AIDS cocktail at $800. There were no takers. There were 3 things I offered that day. One was the AIDS cocktail at $800. 2, any developing country wanting to produce their own ARVs, that is the antiretrovirals, we would give the technology to them free. And 3, the drug that stops the transmission of AIDS mother to child, we would give free in the world. And lo and behold, no takers. 7th of February, front page of the New York Times had the article, Indian company offers the AIDS cocktail at below $1 a day. And that opened the floodgates.
Africa was one of the first countries where Cipla was an entrant with their AIDS cocktail.
The incidence of HIV/AIDS was maximum in Africa, and people were dying there, and the stories that came out of Africa were horrendous. But don't forget that when we offered the cocktail in September 2000, there were no takers. The problem was that even in Africa, there are patent laws.
The fact that the drugs produced by Cipla can save lives is the biggest motivation for Yusuf Hamied.
When we took the lead in India to produce the drugs for HIV/AIDS, and it was in the year 2001 when we announced a price for the AIDS cocktail of below $1 a day, and at that time the international pricing was $12,000, and we offered it at virtually $300. And that was a very breakthrough in the concept that the world, and particularly the third world, required affordable drugs. At that time, 2001, only 2,000 to 4,000 people in Africa could afford treatment. Today, 9 million are being treated. And that gives me individually a great deal of satisfaction.
It was the changing of laws in 1972 that gave Cipla an opportunity to produce newer drugs.
When the laws changed in 72, and we therefore got an opportunity to produce the newer drugs, we had within Cipla the infrastructure to produce the newer drugs. And this is something that we did successfully. That is, in my span of the years, say 70 to 90, we must have produced at least 20 or 30 drugs for the first time in India, which were well-known drugs abroad.
Talking about the future, Yusuf Hamied expresses concern, especially with regards to the existing patent laws.
The challenge is going forward that by 2015, if the laws don't change, it will be a disaster. That is, all the newer products will be out of reach to people like you and me. Already it has started in products that are covered under patent. You can look at some of the anti-cancer drugs. I'll give you one or two examples if you want. There are cancer drugs today from the multinationals at 2,85,000 for 120 tablets per month. And we are selling it at 6,500 or 8,000 per month. So there's going to be a disaster. These few examples where we are selling are the ones where we have taken them on in court of law and won our cases against them. Like Tarceva of Roche, we won our patent case against them. Patent got revoked. Gleevec patent got revoked. Who fought that case? Cipla did for 7 years. More and more companies are looking outside of India to expand their businesses, which is in a way sad, because I think with 1.65 billion population due in 2050, we have an obligation to our country. But obligation is to produce the latest medicines at affordable prices to the layman. Or you have a system of tiered pricing. That if you can afford this drug at 100 rupees and he can't afford it at 10 rupees, you pay 100, let him pay 10. So, but that's a very difficult system. I am a firm believer that the only way to reduce prices in general is by competition.
Even though the start looked difficult, today the market position that Cipla has attained is something that Yusuf Hamied is extremely proud of.
Today, our local business is 45% and export is 55%. That today as a company, we're approaching, this year I think we will exceed in export 5,500 crores. We are among the world's largest producers of products for respiratory disease. We're producing over 5 million inhalers per month for not only India, overseas. Then we are among the leading suppliers of anti-AIDS drugs to Africa. We are among the leading suppliers of anti-malarial drugs to Africa and drugs for neglected diseases. The origins of Cipla, today, I'll tell you, when we started, this was our only setup. We have been a public limited company since 1925. Today we have over 30 manufacturing units all over the country. We're employing 20,000 people today. So 20,000 families are being supported by us in India alone, let alone what we are doing outside India. We have now a factory in Uganda. We have a factory in South Africa. We have a presence in South Africa, which is ours, Uganda, Yemen, etc., etc. We're expanding offices in various countries of the world. And I would say that we are more global now than ever before.
We sincerely hope that the innovative game changers presented by EY has inspired you to dream big, act on your dreams, and in turn inspire countless others. Thank you for taking this 4-week journey with us. But it's finally a wrap on Innovative Game Changers presented by EY. Thanks very much for watching.